Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Sunday afternoon. It's actually Sunday morning here in the Central Time Zone. But joining us from New York City, Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody.
Joining us from Dallas, Texas, and I got to tell you something, MacMahon. A lot of videos have crossed my timeline over the last couple of days here in Nebraska, showing off the Husker fans partying at the Tiki. The Husker fans found the Tiki down in Oklahoma City this weekend. Joining us from Dallas, Texas, Ben MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. Yeah, I know I've gotten reports and I've seen footage and pictures on various social media platforms. Tipsy Tiki has been overflowing with Cornhuskers, as has the GOAT. There's a new sports bar in OKC that our buddy Big Rich just opened up, and the Huskers are good for business. Sweet 16 Cornhuskers.
Our guy's been open that bar for about 2 years, it feels like, and it was good to see it full of NCAA tournament fans this weekend.
I don't know where he got it, if he borrowed it or whatever, but after seeing how many Nebraska fans had gone to Oklahoma City for the first time the Huskers have ever won a NCAA game, and they won 2, somehow a giant flag, like not a flag that you would procure easily in Oklahoma City, of Nebraska flag, ended up at the Tiki by Saturday afternoon.
I'm sure all those Sooners love seeing that. That's a pretty deep-rooted rivalry.
Yeah. Well, not as much anymore since they're not in the same conference, but not so sure the Nebraska fans discovering the Tiki and discovering Bricktown for the first time, which I'm sure there were many. The jumping into the canal there.
It's concerning.
No,
you didn't see any Thunder fans jumping into the canal when they won the title last summer.
No,
They
knew
knew
better
that
than
many
that.
a time. I've never once thought it'd be a good idea to jump in.
Yeah,
no, the canal, the Riverwalk in San Antonio, like none of these are places that you want to take a dip.
correct. Anyway, I don't know if you saw, but the Thunder, we're not going to really talk about the Thunder, but they won their 11th consecutive game on Saturday.
Little fracas.
More fisticuffs. Tell you what, two teams. If the Pistons end up in the finals with the Thunder,
you just did
fisticuffs. I'll tell you what. If we
You might want to use the guard a little bit better than that.
I think we
Well,
just
I got a
saw, for
microphone.
people watching on the
Hit me.
YouTubes, I think we saw
I got a
Windhorst has not
microphone.
been in too many fights.
No, I haven't been. I don't intend to be. But I'm telling you, Pistons Thunder. If we get a finals of Pistons Thunder, oh boy,
Some rock'em
league
sock'em
office gonna be
robots
working
time.
overtime.
Hey, we forget that. We might get it first round with Pistons Hornets round 2.
True. And I would just say that the Pistons are, sort of, that's their MO. I think the Thunder, they invite teams getting their feelings a little bit about Oklahoma City.
The level of physicality that the Thunder play with definitely leads to some harsh feelings.
Like
Yeah.
the Pistons. Pistons do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, the Thunder are also the champs.
There's that. Yeah, I don't think the Lizards are too concerned about how many games you've won. That's not really part of the equation in Washington right now.
I think the Pacers have lost 15 in a row, and the Wizards have lost 14, or it's 15. I think it's actually 15
Pending
and 16.
tonight's game at Madison Square Garden against the Knicks. So we'll see if it extends or not.
Yeah, tough blow for the Lizards. That pesky little thigh contusion's acting up again for Trae Young. I'm sure that folks within that Lizards franchise are pretty disappointed that Trae's not going to be able to play for a little bit here. And waiting on AD, that 6-week timetable to recover from the hand injury the Mavs put out. Well, we're about 4 weeks past that.
By the way, before we actually get into the podcast, as long as we're messing around here and annoying Jackson, did you see Victor Wembanyama's Tom Cruise-esque flyby of Rick Carlisle last night?
I did.
I'm not sure. I was not watching Pacers Spurs, so I'm not sure what that was about. But he very purposely ran over and bumped into Carlisle on the sideline like he was Tom Cruise buzzing the tower.
Carlisle got back.
Yes, he did.
He can be nimble on the sidelines. One of my favorite Rick Carlisle techniques is the angry Rick timeout, where he storms out onto the floor and while calling a timeout and almost runs into the ref and then looks at the ref like he's mad at the ref.
Spoelstra.
The ref is going out of place.
The Spoelstra rage timeout is where he he stomps about 12 feet out on the court
he's
and then does
sprinting
the
out there
about
like
face.
he's running the 100.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I think Spoelstra could probably the fastest 40 time of current coaches.
Did Spoelstra call any of those while Luka was lighting them up for 60 the other night?
Oh my goodness! How about Bam? By the way, before we talk about the Lakers, how about Bam with the low key trash talk? I want to give Bam. Spoelstra gets a special honor. I don't know what I'm going to call it for apologizing to absolutely nobody. I love that. And then Luka puts 60 on the Heat in a absolutely jaw-dropping masterpiece performance.
Mm-hmm.
And Bam goes, "Yeah, man, 60 is amazing. Now you know how hard it is to get to 80."
Well, 83,
Yeah.
and I tell you, listen, I know I criticized the stat padding and all that, and hurt some feelings down there in South Beach. Oh, some of those, unbiased Heat media folks and some others. I tell you though, I can appreciate the way that the Heat are really leaning in 83. They're selling the jerseys, and as a special tribute to Bam's 83, that is the exact number of games I think the Heat are going to end up playing this season.
He had that one in the chamber.
You think? By the way, I think they're probably going to play at least 84, but we'll see.
Oh, we'll see.
All the injuries the Sixers have, I suspect the Sixers and Hornets will wind up
in all seriousness, though,
playing mix.
That win over the Heat for the Lakers and for Luka scoring 60, for LeBron getting a triple-double, that was an amazing win. That was such a bad piece of scheduling for the Lakers. They had an 8:30 local tip in Houston the night before, which means 8:45. National TV game, blah, blah, blah. Good win over the Rockets. LeBron had 6 dunks in that game at the age of 41. I mean, what are we even watching? It's unbelievable. And then they don't get to their hotel in Miami until damn near 5 o'clock in the
Wheels
morning.
down. I looked at their flight. The wheels down at Miami International at 3:59 a.m.
Yeah. And so I was honestly surprised that all their guys played. They were,
Me too.
Luka,
They put him as questionable so that they were cleared. Luka, Reeves, and LeBron were listed as questionable so that they satisfied all the rules so that they could have easily ruled them out. And then they didn't.
And then for LeBron to turn around the next night and go for a triple-double, and for Luka to have it, that's 60. I'm sorry. That's more impressive than Bam's 83 against a tanking team. That's 60 when you needed all 60 to win a 22, 21-hour turnaround back-to-back against a team that is trying to make the playoffs.
Well, there was a couple of crazy back-to-backs. So the other day, Denver played at home. I'm trying to think if that was a national TV game. But then they played...
That was the rescheduled game in Memphis that they ended up managing to lose.
So I looked at they landed at Memphis International. I believe it's Frederick W. Smith International. Anybody know who Frederick Smith was?
Founder of FedEx.
Good job.
Great.
They landed at 3:18 a.m. So that's a tough turn, but that's a makeup game. This game was scheduled.
Yeah, that's bad scheduling by the NBA. But again, for the Lakers to be able to win it in 60 on 18 of 30 shooting, sheesh. And then that's not what everybody's talking about with Luka coming out of the weekend, which is impressive.
Well, okay, we'll get there in a second, but let's just acknowledge some of the 3-pointers that Luka threw in the fourth quarter of that game. I've been watching Luka for years now, and I've constantly been amazed at how he looks like he moves slowly but still gets open. And I was talking with someone who's in basketball. Literally was talking with them on Friday night after that game. I watched the game on the plane home from LA, had terrific Wi-Fi.
All right.
It was awesome. Oh my God. I was watching it live. I was like, I'm not one of these guys that reacts to basketball games, but when Luka was throwing in some of those shots, I was sitting there going, I was like exclaiming, and people thought I was watching NCAA. I was like, no, I was watching the best thing going. I was talking to someone who knows basketball very well. I'm not going to say it anymore, but he said to me, the reason that Luka is able to do this is because if he's an elite decelerator.
Yeah.
So when you think about what you want to do in any sport, you want to accelerate, right? And certainly there's incredible accelerators in basketball where you can get the corner turned, you can outrun guys. It's a premium attribute to have. But he was saying that if you watch Luka closely, and I watched some film back of several games just in the last couple of days, and this is what Luka can do. Luka can slow down faster than other people. He's able to change speeds. I would almost compare it to Greg Maddux.
Very timely reference.
Greg Maddux, this is sort of my age bracket here. Greg Maddux, he could barely break a plane of gas. He could barely break a plane of glass with his fastball. But Maddux could move things around. Every pitch was a different speed. He never walked anybody famously. And the other thing that Maddux could do is he could throw from a bunch of different arm angles. And that's like Luka too, MacMahon. Luka can score over the top of his head. He can shoot it from the side. He can shoot it like sidearm. He can shoot it underhanded. He's got a mastery of changing speeds. And once Luka has you on his hip,
you're at his mercy.
Because he can slow down faster than you. Like if he has you go in one direction, he can stop and turn. Even though the turn isn't fast, he can do that movement. He can slow down faster than you can slow down.
Yeah, I wrote a story on this. This was when Luka was still in Dallas. And actually, this was when JJ Redick was still at ESPN. JJ shouted this story out on a broadcast. But Luka is a prime example of this.
Oh, aren't you so impressive?
Yeah, well, Doris Burke loves me too, not you guys. Luka, Joker is another one. Anthony Edwards is the example of a guy who's got elite acceleration and deceleration. But if you talk to, and I talked to the people at P3, that performance lab basically. And, Luka went there when he was with Real Madrid. Bill Duffy had him go there and train during the summer, the year before his final season in Spain. In the testing, Luka and James Harden, you could basically put them over each other, and the testing graphs were almost identical. And so the deceleration, the ability to put it in reverse even, that's the step back stuff. And that's also being able to finish in the lane, without traditional explosiveness. And Luka and Joker especially, they use that decel not just to be able to finish, but a lot of times it's that slow step stuff. And you've seen that's the biggest trend around the league now, is that slow step stuff in the lane. They use it a lot of times to set up a pass too, to create that passing lane to get a guy a wide open three or to throw the late lob.
Yeah, if you're an offensive player, the thing you want to do is get the defender off balance and create an advantage, right? It doesn't matter if it's like you said, if it's Anthony Edwards going super fast or if it's Luka or Jokic going super slow. The whole thing is if you can get the defender to hesitate or get off balance and then be able to attack them, that's what makes the elite players so effective. And whether it's Shea, whether it's Luka, whether it's Jalen Brunson, whether it's Jokic, any of these guys, that's the thing they all have in common. They might do it in different ways, but they excel at making the defender uncomfortable and not know what they're going to do next. And when you watch Luka play, that creativity that he's got to find a way to manipulate the defense is what makes him such a special player. And it's what's been so evident during this run is that he is in one of those rhythms right now where he's feeling good. The Lakers are in a good rhythm as a team, obviously, and he's able to get wherever he wants to go on the court. And as a result of that, he's getting the Lakers clean looks, whether it's for himself or others. And it's made them into an absolute juggernaut lately. And it also bears repeating. I looked it up while you guys were talking. The Lakers are 22-6 in clutch games this season. No other team has less than 10 losses on the season, and they're more than 10 percentage points better than everybody else. And you could point to that and say, this team only has a +1 point differential, and they're not actually that good, and they're going to lose early in the playoffs because when they get up against a high-level opponent, they're not going to be able to survive on clutch time. Or you can point at it and say, they have Luka Doncic, they have LeBron James, they have Austin Reeves, they have three guys who can all isolate and get buckets late in games, are all smart decision makers, all know how to play, and they can manipulate the defenses late in games, and they can make more plays than their opponent against any kind of competition because they have super high level individual offensive creators. And that push and pull with the Lakers is the thing that we're just going to have to wait until the playoffs, see how it goes, because that is the core argument one way or the other against whether this is a legitimate team that can make a run or one that's doing it. Smoke and mirrors might be strong, but overplaying what they have because of their ability to perform late in games. And that'll show the opposite way when the playoffs come around.
Well, speaking of getting up, something else that I will tell you about the Lakers that's a facet. And yes, they probably are a little, some of that 22-6 record is due to variance. A lot of it's due to the mastery of Luka and LeBron and Reeves. But this interesting stat from ESPN research. So last night or Saturday night, I should say, against the Orlando Magic, which we're going to talk about in a second, they led that game by as many as 14 points. They ended up winning with less than a second left, which we'll talk about in a second. But when they get up by 14 points or more in a game this year, they're 30-0. Now, we are in the era where no lead is safe.
Mm-hmm.
And last night, they could have lost that game. However, it's something to be said for being able to control the game once you get a lead and not let another team back in. So what you're saying about the Lakers is if you get into a close game, okay, they're not going to win them all, especially in the playoffs against super elite competition. But you get in a close game, you got to like their chances. And secondly, if they get up on you, they're not going to let you back in it, most likely. That's two facets of, I would prefer a team that doesn't have to play the fourth quarter because they hold those 14-point leads so much that they don't have to play these clutch time games. But these are facets of high-level teams, just the truth.
If you talk to analytics-driven people around the league, they'll kind of be dismissive of clutch stats and say, it's those are more luck-based than anything else. I don't think, though, that you can just dismiss the fact that they've got guys who are proven closers. And also, hey, I think we've got to give J.J. Redick and his coaching staff some credit here, too. They consistently draw up stuff in end-of-game situations that gets guys wide open looks. We saw it with Luke Kennard in Orlando. And I'm thinking even some of the times, some of their rare misses, the rare clutch losses, like there was that debacle where Luka passed up a wide open look and threw a grenade to LeBron the last time they played the Magic and they lost that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So both those games. So that last time they lost to the Magic was when they were in that stretch where I think they lost 5 of 7.
Yeah, 3 in a row.
Yeah, they were 3 in a row there. And I think since that time, they've won 12 of 13. But anyway, that game in Orlando was where they ran basically that football play where the entire team was behind the half-court line. They all run across like receivers coming out of a bunch formation. Luka ends up with a wide-open shot from what would you say, MacMahon, 25?
I mean, it was probably 27, 28, but
okay.
Luka's never hesitated to take a wide open look at that range. That's a shot that he's comfortable with. And he just, for whatever reason.
Well, there was some stats that he hasn't been taking last second shots, but it's either here nor there. It was obviously a really nice play design that resulted in not winning the game. And that was a clutch time loss. And they actually went through a stretch there where they lost a few clutch time games. All right. So now you look at the game on Saturday. Okay, this game was messy at the end. Both teams did some wild stuff, including the Magic turning the ball over and handing the Lakers a chance to win the game. That's another topic. But in the end of the game, again, you've got J.J. Redick designing a play that I don't know what you would call it. It was another trips set. It was basically, in this case, Kennard, LeBron, and Luka basically running a pattern which confused the Magic and resulted in Luke Kennard getting I think 10.5-foot open shot was what the data showed.
And remember what happened seconds before that is LeBron got a layup and it wasn't whistled, but he got the hell hacked out of him by Paulo. And so on this play, it's dude, Luke Kennard's leading the league in 3-point percentage. How does he get wide open? And the simple answer is that the Magic were so worried about, LeBron set up like he was going to set a screen and then just dived hard to the rim. And Bain switched it, but Paulo stuck with LeBron. So you've got 2 on LeBron. because they're so worried about him diving hard to the rim, and then none on Luke Kennard. It was a botched switch or botched communication by the Magic, but that's how Kennard got so open.
Excellent play and excellent recognition by Marcus Smart, who was inbounding. I'm sure that they've run through this and that he knows what to look for. But still, obviously, you got Luka and LeBron in the play, and you're trying to get a basket to tie the game or win the game. And Kennard's the guy open, and Smart hit the open guy. I mean, what's his percentage on that shot, Bontemps? Wide open shot, catch and shoot. I mean, he's probably 60% on that shot.
I mean, Luke Kennard might be the single best guy in the league to take that shot. I'm not even
And they
exaggerating.
designed it specifically to get it for him.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Kennard on wide open shots, I'd have to go look at the numbers. He might legitimately be the best shooter in the NBA. I mean, his issue has always been he's a guy that is sometimes hesitant to let it go if he's not wide open. But his percentages year over year are sky high in part because if he gets an open look, it's going in. And when he caught the ball at the top of the key, I was like, there's no way this is doing anything but going through the basket. I mean, there was just no doubt in my mind. And yeah, it was an incredibly impressive play.
He was so open. He had time to adjust the shooting sleeve during the play.
I didn't notice that.
Catch it and then let that thing fly.
Well, all right. So on Monday, there is a game that in theory would be pretty interesting, which is the Lakers in the last high-stakes game of this road trip, which they're already 4-0 on, playing in Detroit. They finished the road trip on Wednesday in Indiana, and I would highly recommend they win that game, and I can't see them not winning it.
Good advice.
Vica Zubac, by the way, out for the year with a broken rib. That's an injury that does not require skepticism. That sucks. So he's not going to play in that game. But anyway, however, on Monday, as we talked about last week, there will be no Cade Cunningham as he deals with his own sternum, rib cage, lung issue, which I hope he's feeling better. That no good. And I don't think we're going to see Luka either. We haven't gotten the official announcement as we're recording this, MacMahon, but the 16 tech has come for Luka, and I don't think he's wiggling out of this one. I guess I don't know. I guess I've seen things happen, so I guess I shouldn't say that. But
he twice, as Mac 10 pointed out in his very well reported story from Orlando, where he got all sides of the story. Twice, I believe, Luka's last 2 full years in Dallas, they did rescind what would have been the technical that
that's right.
would have been the suspension, including the year they went to the West Finals. Luka, when he first strained that calf in the regular season finale against the Spurs, he only played in that game because the technical foul was rescinded. So ended up costing him 3 games instead of 1 because he strained the calf the first 3 games of the playoffs when Jalen Brunson made himself a lot of money. But look, this one, there's a lot of he said, he started it. No, he started it.
Yeah. Look, I just want to say, it's kind of like I give people a pass on tanking, good people doing, bad things for the sake of tanking. I'm not going to judge it. Like JJ Redick comes into the press conference and he's like, Goga said something about his family.
JJ said something. He said something about his mother, and then
that's what it was. His
Luka
mother
said that Goga said, "Bleep his whole. I'll bleep your whole family."
Right.
And so
but it was all apparently it was all in Serbian.
It was all in Serbian,
right?
And
so we're all taking everybody's. But there was incredible coverage of the detail of the trash talk that went down.
Right, and Goga said, "Hey, I just repeated what Luka said to me." That's the Cliff Notes version.
Right.
I know one of those guys is a pretty notorious trash talker, and it's not Goga. So believe what you will.
Well, look, I'm just saying, like, he said something about his mother. Oh, he said something about his mother? Oh, well, in that case, that technical is getting rescinded. Like I said, they're doing what they got to do. But it was kind of fun.
They got to back their guy. And because Luka, to his credit, has done something about his conditioning and made massive strides there, this is the one massive flaw that he has. It's petulance, oftentimes vented at refs. In this case, it was at another player. The result was the same. He got another technical foul. Luka took accountability for letting his teammates down, but he definitely put the blame on Goga. And Goga talking to Mac 10 and the Orlando Sentinel beat writer over the phone because he wanted to get his side on the record. Basically, he said, talk about respect for families, blah, blah, blah. He said he just said some inappropriate things in the Serbian language, which I played in Serbia. I understand. I don't know if he knew I understood what he said, so I just said it back. And there was nothing towards his family or anybody. His family, I really, truly respect them. But basically he's saying I repeated back to Luka what Luka said to me. So point being, look, here's what happened. Luka, who's been on a sizzling streak even by his standards, couldn't hit a shot in the second half, right?
He started 10 of 15, and
Mm-hmm.
I think he finished 1 of 13, I think, after that.
Something like that. Goga fouled him, and Luka and Goga getting this thing where there's trash talk in Serbian while Luka's at the free throw line. He said whoever started it.
We need
whatever.
Jokic to mitigate. We need Jokic to come in and determine, he needs to be like the ref and issue the edict on whether or not this technical should stand.
So Luka misses the first free throw, and then his protest from the referees, he just said this, and that, in the middle of the thing, makes the second free throw. Then they go back down the court and they're barking, and then double tees. And then the Lakers are mad that they said there weren't warnings issued. Mark Davis, the ref, told the pool reporter, yeah, there was warnings issued when they were going at it while Luke was at the free throw line.
Yeah, based on the pool report, it does not. I mean, look, like I said,
this is very simple. If Luka Doncic doesn't want to get suspended for technical fouls, guess what? Don't get technical fouls all the time. Like this isn't
right,
this is not
right.
some sort of conspiracy against Luka Doncic and the Lakers. Like, give me a break. Like, if you're going to act like this all the time and get technicals all the time, then yeah, this is it. There's a reason why MacMahon was on pool reporter duty when he was in Dallas, and every time Luka get a technical, he would go down to the ref's room and do an interview after the game and find out why he got a technical, because this became a story every single year because the guy is flirting with a suspension every single year or getting a suspension every single year, and they're fighting to get these texts rescinded because he keeps getting them. So just don't get them anymore.
It was wildly inappropriate whenever MacMahon filed a pool report that he denoted the ref's height. So I never thought that was
That's the first question of every pool report I do.
I'm just so tired
I don't do
of
nearly
this
as many of them now that Luka's gone.
Right.
No, you don't.
But
I'm
look,
just so
man,
tired of this whole discussion for that reason. Like, just
agree.
don't put yourself in that position. We're talking about a guy who's on his third contract in the NBA. Like, come on. We're not talking about a teenager.
I know, obviously. But, I know obviously and Laker fans don't always go together. But
or Luka fans for that matter.
Well, that's
it's
true.
the same thing in Dallas. It's not like this is new.
Yeah, of course you're going to defend your guy. I get it. I'm just saying, look, I will say this. Luka was averaging a technical about every 3.5 games. We'll give him a nudge and say he was averaging a technical every 4 games. He hadn't gotten one in 9+ games. This was the 10th game since he had gotten a tech.
I covered the 2 games in Houston. In the first game, I was on red alert on multiple occasions.
Okay, so you're saying he was bubbling in that direction?
It was, and here's the thing, refs follow the league. Refs don't want to be the guy who gives an MVP candidate. Luka is back to being a legitimate MVP candidate with this run he's on. Refs don't want to be the guy who gives an MVP candidate a 1-game suspension. They know he has 15. Just like when Luka or
Mark
Draymond.
Davis is one of the top officials in the league.
It's the Draymond get the technical foul 3 minutes into the game thing and then go crazy the rest of the game because he knows the refs aren't going to want to throw him out because the refs are trying not to put their thumb on the scale in the game.
And Luka's done the same thing. And, JJ was asked, I think after the Heat game, again, when Luka, 60 points on that kind of a back-to-back against
just insane.
A decent
just
opponent.
Insane performance.
It was an absolutely masterpiece of offensive basketball.
It's on the short list of his best performances. And the guy's had a 60-point triple-double. He's had all kinds of monster nights. But JJ's asked about that game, basically why wouldn't Luka be the MVP? And JJ kind of gave a snarky, I don't know, because he complains to refs. But dude, it is his biggest flaw. And I would say not just complain to refs, the petulance, right? In this case, it's going at opponents. And sometimes that stuff fuels them. Sometimes it distracts them. The refs stuff. But here's the thing. And I can empathize with Luka. He's going through a very, very difficult time in his personal life that unfortunately has become public knowledge with the custody battle and all that stuff, right? When times are tough for Luka off the floor, that's when he's at his most petulant on the floor. He went through some very difficult stuff in his personal life in Dallas that, he has not discussed publicly, and just I sympathize with the guy. He went through some really tough things, but it was a situation where like people with the Mavericks knew just based on who was in town, like, hey, Luka's going to be volatile tonight, and Luka, he goes at refs in particular when he's venting because he's really frustrated with other things. Sometimes frustrated with things within the franchise. A lot of times it's stuff in his personal life. And like, you can sympathize with that and say, hey, like, it's really the one thing that's holding you back. And again, it's not just, hey, he gets technical fouls. It's, hey, he's not getting back on defense because he's so engaged in the referees. It's that kind of stuff. And again,
he gets distracted. He gets knocked off his game because, again, we're talking about one of the best players on the planet. And look, this is the same stuff that Nikola Jokic has dealt with at times in the past too. I mean, remember, before Jokic won the title, I mean, he got ejected from the end of that playoff series against the Suns. Like, he's had some moments like that too. And then he went through and won the title, and now like that's all in the rearview mirror. So
Joker's been pretty volatile lately with some of the physicality stuff, but I hear you.
I agree. My point is, when you get to the mountaintop and you win the title, that stuff gets pushed to the side, right? And people just think of you as winning in the end. So whenever, I mean, I expect Luka at some point in his career to win a title because the guy's one of the most talented players ever. So at some point, I am guessing there'll be a similar path for him. But yeah, if you're talking about flaws in his game, when he gets off kilter and gets distracted, that's when the defense slips, starts focusing on the refs. He gets out of the rhythm that he's been in. And we've seen it the last few weeks when he is playing like this. Like, there's a reason why it was so insane Dallas made the trade, which again, it's an obvious thing to say, but like, you watch this last month, it's like this guy can do things hardly anybody who's ever played the sport can do. And like, you're seeing it with this Lakers team. And as we've talked about, it's an imperfect, flawed Laker team that isn't a great fit overall for what his skill set is and what you can really do to optimize him. And they're still on this run, and they still could potentially have a chance.
Before we switch topics, which we're about to.
I don't want to switch yet.
Okay.
I got a couple other points to make. Real quick, Luka is averaging in this, where they're 12-1 in this stretch. Like, and the Lakers have morphed into like, hey, we got to, if we're going to take the Nuggets seriously as a contender in the West, we got to include the Lakers in that conversation. Luka's averaging 36, 8, and 8 with over 2 steals and almost a block per game during the stretch on remarkable efficiency. And Wendy, what do you think is it going to be the Luka topic on when you're on Get Up Monday morning?
I'm not doing Get Up on Monday. I can't handle it. Yeah, I know.
Okay,
I
you know what I'm saying.
He's going to get suspended. Yes.
Get Up and First Take. That's going to be the topic.
Yeah.
And the other thing though that's happened is, like, Wendy, you said it on multiple occasions. We all said it, and the data at the time was awfully convincing that Luka, Reeves, LeBron as a trio didn't work.
That's right.
Since that 3-game losing streak, that loss to Orlando was part of it that we mentioned. So starting late February here, in 216 minutes, that trio has a net rating of plus 18.3, offensive rating 124, defensive rating in 106 in that range. And they were minus 4.9 in 238 minutes before then. What's happened? LeBron has accepted his backseat role, and LeBron has been an absolute monster as a fewer than 15 field goal attempt per game guy. Like, he's averaged almost 20 per game.
LeBron's ISOs have dropped dramatically. LeBron, you know what stat you can look at to see the difference between how LeBron's playing now is the number of dribbles per game LeBron is taking is down like a huge amount.
But again, he's been awesome. Like he's averaging 19.7 points, shooting about 60% from the floor, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. He's still as dominant he's leading the league in fast break points. I watched 2 games in Houston. The man dunked 9 times, and like 6 of them were absolute highlight reel dunks. LeBron, and less is definitely more for a 41-year-old, which isn't a shock. The shock is a 41-year-old still so damn athletic, but they've got a clearly defined pecking order now. LeBron's thriving in that role. And if you'd have told me in late February, hey, LeBron might actually be back in LA, which when you always try to leave wiggle room and I never wanted to hear it, I'll listen now because they've got, and like this team, they're enjoying each other. Like the chemistry has done a 180.
His true shooting percentage since the All-Star break is 62%. His usage rate has gone from 28 to 23. So there's your.
Let's see where things are at in a month before.
Well, here's what I would just say.
That.
Here's what I would just say.
I'm just saying, like, let's see where they're at in a month.
But they've racked up some really, really good wins, and this ain't just beating tanking teams.
They've played great. I mean, listen, in the last week, look, did they get lucky to beat Denver? Yeah, but they won. Did they get lucky to beat Orlando? Yeah, but they won. They beat Houston twice on the road in a baseball series. It's very hard to do. They win this crazy back-to-back in Miami. Like, they're beating real teams.
Beat the Knicks, beat the Wolves.
Right. They're playing great. All I was saying about let's wait a month and see where things are at let's see how the playoffs go before we get too far into.
That's fair.
The chemistry's improved. LeBron might be back, all this kind of stuff.
What you guys are talking about with what's happened with the Lakers' big three and what you're talking about Bontemps was, let's see what happens in the playoffs. I have spent most of my career covering the NBA, and I have developed a 3-word statement that covers all of these eventualities.
There's always time.
That's right.
Don't make
There's
opinions.
always time. Before we move on, because you're talking about Mavericks
I thought
trades,
the 3 words were leave wiggle room, which you're better at than I am.
There's always
don't make
time.
predictions. I said don't make opinions. I meant don't make predictions is what I meant to say. I messed it up.
How about, can I just point out that recent Mavericks trade piece, Quentin Grimes, is putting up like humongous numbers since Tyrese Maxey went down?
He's put up humongous numbers from basically the moment he got to Philadelphia last year.
Well, but not really this year when VJ Edgecombe took some of his.
I mean, he was still playing very well
He's averaging 8 less points per game this year. But I just want to point out, since Maxey went down, Grimes, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent, is having, and they beat Utah. They beat Utah in sack over the last couple of days on the road.
That was the second worst trade of Nico's final deadline.
I just say he's had a whole bunch of really high level performances.
He's played great.
Yeah. And I think he's pretty much played every game this year. He's maybe missed 1 game or 2 games. Well, maybe he's missed a couple more.
He's been awesome for them. I mean, he's been one of the best 6 men in the league all year. It's going to be very interesting free agency. And in light of the Jared McCain trade, like when Philadelphia made that trade, there's obviously it's been a hotly debated topic in Philly, but when you make that trade and you keep Grimes, the idea clearly is you're going to have him as your third guard with Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe going forward. And if he somehow leaves this summer as a free agent and they don't retain his services, it's only going to put a bigger spotlight on that trade, which, and on top of how Grimes has played, certainly you would think would give him some leverage in those negotiations to get a payday in Philly.
Well, I don't mean to, poke the Mavericks even further, but they lost their how many games in a row now?
Well, the Mavericks are trying to lose.
I understand, but I saw they haven't won at home in 2 months.
The Mavericks are in the midst of their worst 25-game stretch of this millennium. That's all you need to know.
The Mavericks are having an incredible stretch because, look, the NBA, I think sort of ridiculously brought the hammer down only on Indiana and Utah back in February. And you could say they should have brought the hammer down on Indiana and Utah. But if you're going to do that, to me, you should be doing it to everybody. And the last month has been a joke, as we know, for all these teams.
We don't talk about tanking.
Well, you just brought up Dallas. You got Memphis, you got Dallas, you got Indiana and Washington losing 1 million games in a row now. Like
the Mavericks, their tanking measures aren't that extreme. They just stink. Like Memphis and Washington, some of these other teams are being very creative. The Mavericks just stink.
Dallas now has a 37% chance of getting a top 4 pick.
Well, and forget that. The key for me is that Dallas has gotten themselves into having an extremely high probability of having a top 7 pick. And in this draft, you want to have a top 7 pick. There's the 4 guys at the top in whatever order: AJ DeBanza, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, and Caleb Wilson. And then there's the 3 guards: Keaton Wagler from Illinois, Kingston Flemings from Houston, Dallas guy, and Darius Acuff, or he's from San Antonio. Darius Acuff, I believe, a Dallas guy from Arkansas.
Acuff's a Dallas guy?
I thought so. I could be wrong about that. But if you get one of those top 7 guys to pair with Cooper Flagg going forward, I think the Mavericks are going to be feeling pretty good about where they're at.
Don't worry, the Bulls are in 9th.
Yes, they are. But this slide has gotten the Mavericks down into pretty good position to get one of those picks, which would be pretty big time for them if they don't jump up.
Question. What was the biggest win in the NBA on Saturday night?
Acuff's from Detroit. Sorry, I messed that up.
I was going to say.
Messed that up.
What was the biggest win
He's
in the
damn
NBA
good,
on
though.
Saturday? What was the biggest win in the NBA on Saturday night?
Biggest win in the NBA on
I'll
Saturday
wait.
night?
I'll wait.
It wasn't Lakers over Magic?
No, clearly not.
Oh, Cavs corner?
Hashtag Cavs Corner down in New Orleans.
You know the Pelicans had won 7 consecutive home games.
Hey, in all seriousness, James Borrego is doing a great job down
That's
there in
right.
New Orleans, and I don't think he's going to get legitimate consideration to be the head coach on a full-time basis moving forward. And I think that is evidence that you've got a bad front office in place there. Go on.
Well, I don't know whether he's going to get consideration or not. We haven't.
Okay. Have you heard that he is?
I haven't heard that he isn't.
I don't think that he is either, and I would agree with MacMahon.
Okay. Like Wendy, this is a case where you don't want to say what you know, but you know that I'm not pulling things out of thin air. So go on.
I agree. I'm just trying to protect you from getting aggregated.
I don't give a crap.
All right. Anyway, yes, James Borrego's doing a very good job. The mandate, because they don't have their pick, was to win. That was the mandate given when he took over, win, and he has made decisions that have been focused on winning, specifically with who he's playing.
Including not starting the guy who's the reason you don't have the pick. Go on.
That's true. He put both rookies onto the bench, Fears and Queen, and also they got back DeJounte Murray in this stretch, and DeJounte's has significant impact. That has also helped.
And they're one of the few teams that's trying, and so therefore by default you're picking up wins against the teams that
That's
are not.
true.
But they've also won some games against teams that are trying, like they just beat the Clippers twice in a row.
Twice.
Yes. The Clippers have hit a bit of a skid here after they were going well, although they did win in overtime on Saturday.
If they'd have lost that one, they'd be looking at a losing streak that includes losses to the Kings, twice to the Pelicans, and the Mavericks. They pulled it out in OT, but they were in serious danger zone.
It's good to see Darius Garland back.
He had 40,
in
and Kawhi had 35 in that game.
I watched Garland's pregame warm-up. There was he took 15 deep threes in a row and didn't touch the rim. Anyways, go on.
He's a very talented guy.
He's a live body when he's healthy. The guy he was traded for, though, James Harden, the Cavs are now 13-4 when Harden plays. And this was a low-key good win for the Cavs. They just finished a 3-0 road trip. I'm not sure. So when you look at the Eastern Conference right now, you obviously have Boston. Tatum is looking better basically by the game. That should be a loud sounding, something that's very loud in the Eastern Conference. To me, they are the number 1 favorites right now. You've got Cade likely out for the rest of the regular season. They should be okay. Their schedule is not simple. But they have a 4-game lead in the loss column plus the tiebreaker over Boston. And they have tiebreaker over New York. Not that I think New York's that's why I'm making a run. The Knicks and the Knicks and the Cavs are sort of kind of doing the same thing different ways. They're racking up wins, but unimpressively. But anyway, the Cavs just went on a 3-0 road trip. They won in Milwaukee where Giannis didn't play, and it was an unimpressive win. Then they went to Chicago and they got up by 29 and let the lead go all the way down to 1 in the fourth quarter before they put it away.
Escaped.
And then they were down 15 in the second half to the Pelicans, who were trying to win their 8th consecutive home game. And then they had a huge rally in the fourth quarter. Harden and Donovan Mitchell were excellent down the stretch of this game. Donovan, I think, had 12 or 14 in the fourth. Cleveland, we haven't talked about them in a while. Donovan had a very good end to that game, but ever since he's had a groin injury and he missed 3 or 4 games a couple of weeks ago, his numbers have been leveled off a little bit.
And he's dealing with this eye thing too now.
Yeah, and his eye.
Well, and Cleveland did have one of the worst losses over the last couple of weeks when they somehow managed to lose by double figures to that Mavericks team we just were hammering.
Last Sunday, yeah.
On the road, by the way, a couple nights after beating them by 30-something.
That's right.
I would like to see the itinerary the previous night of a certain Cavs star player.
Well, and to go back to Detroit real quick, just because it's interesting with the Cade thing, their schedule the rest of the month is Lakers at home, Hawks at home, Pelicans on a back-to-back at home, then at Minnesota, at OKC, and then home for Toronto on a back-to-back. That is not an easy stretch of schedule, particularly without Cade. So if they can go 3-3 in that stretch or better, I think they're going to be in pretty darn good shape to keep the number 1 seed. But if they go 1-5, 2-4, and Boston can rip off a few wins, in April, they've got another game with Minnesota. They have Philly. They've got Orlando. Then they've got Milwaukee and Indiana and Charlotte, the final couple games of the season. So Indiana and Milwaukee should be wins. But all these other games are against teams that are trying to play for something and have been on decent runs. So the Pistons are going to have some work to do to keep that number 1 seed without Cade. And it is going to be an interesting test to see what they look like because, as we've talked about, the big question about this team is what do they do without Cade on the court in general in the playoffs? And now, they're going to have a lot of time down the stretch to see what that looks like.
So the Cavs, with this 3-game win streak, have opened up a little bit of a cushion on Toronto for the last home court seed in the East. Toronto has sort of been spinning its wheels for a while here. Toronto has the tiebreak, but the Cavs now have a 3-game lead in the loss column. Cavs also have the 3rd easiest schedule.
Yeah, they're projected to be 6 games up on Toronto at the end. I don't think that's the question. I think the question is, can they catch anybody in front of them? They're projected to be 1 game back of the Knicks and 2 games back of Boston.
If you're Cleveland, would you rather be 3 than 4?
No,
they do not match up well against the Celtics. They've done better. They should have beaten the Pistons 3 out of 4 this year, but the one game we've talked about, Jalen Tyson fouled 70 feet from the basket and lost in overtime. So
if I'm Cleveland, I don't want any part of the Celtics till I have to play them. So if I could be on the opposite side of the bracket of them and the Knicks, that would be fine if I were them. Just let them play and sort it out later.
They've had some issues with Orlando in the past, and they play Orlando again this week coming up. If Orlando ends up as the 5, that 4-5 matchup, I think, depending on Franz Wagner, that would be I think a real battle. I would favor Cleveland in that battle, but Orlando has given them some problems.
Well, Orlando's got some winning to do if they're going to get there.
Yeah, they've now lost 4 in a row. And by the way, the Atlanta Hawks,
there you go,
not beaten a real team since the All-Star break, are 12-1 since the All-Star break.
They have a couple of decent wins. They in Orlando when they beat them was hot.
No, they don't.
Well,
Orlando's the one. That's right.
Okay.
Orlando's the
That's
one
fine.
game because the Philly was all banged up and every other game was against a tanker. It's not their fault. They beat everybody that's in front of them.
Now they're going to get Detroit without Cade and Isaiah Stewart.
But they played Houston on Friday in a real test, and they got smacked.
Didn't go well.
And look, they've played much better, to be clear. But it has been a remarkable stretch of schedule for them, and they've taken absolute full advantage of it. I mean, like MacMahon said before, Cleveland nearly lost several of these games to tankers, lost a game to Dallas. You got to beat who's in front of you. But just by doing that for a month, they went from being a disappointment all season and floating in 9th or 10th and within a game or 2 of Milwaukee. Wasn't that long ago when they had roughly the same record as the Bucks. And now they're way over 500. They're into the top 6 and they've got a chance to, maybe even get up to 5, which is crazy.
Think about how much the Hawks roster's changed over the course of the season.
Yes.
There is zero there is basically zero drama in the back half of the West playoffs. Phoenix has lost 5 in a row. So it's now Minnesota and Denver are tied basically at 5th and 6th. And then it's 4 games Phoenix, 4 games Clippers. There's no drama at all basically there. And there's 9 games.
Yeah, the drama is who's going to be 8 or 9, Clippers or Blazers.
Right. There's 9 games separating 10 and 11.
And in the East, you've got 3 games separating 5 and 10. It could go in any direction.
Right. So let me give you, and all I care about is the loss column. Don't tell me the win column. The loss column is what you can control.
And by the way, Atlanta, who do they play Monday night? They got Memphis at home. It's going to be 13-1 in their 14 games since the All-Star break.
All right. So right now, as we're doing this pod on Sunday, Atlanta has 32 losses. They're technically in 6th. They've got some tiebreak over Philly. Atlanta's got 32 losses. Philly's got 32 losses. Orlando's got 32 losses. Miami's got 33 losses. Charlotte's got 34. So any of those teams could end up between 6 and 10. You could see any combination.
And Toronto's only a couple games ahead. They could easily wind up back there too.
Let me see how tough Toronto's got. Toronto's got an easy schedule coming in.
Charlotte in 10th there. Out of all those teams, if you want to look at like a larger sample size, like call it since the 26th part of the schedule, since January 1st, Charlotte's played the best basketball of all those teams.
Well, listen, as of right now, our projection system as of Sunday afternoon has Toronto finishing 5th with 46 wins, the Hawks finishing 6th with 45 wins, then Orlando having over 44.5, so we'll say 45 wins, and then Philly, Miami, and Charlotte all having 44 wins. So it's probably going to be tight all the way down to the last game of the season. And one sneaky thing that could wind up being a factor in all this is the
division.
And the fact that the 4 of those teams are all in the Southwest Division or Southeast Division. Like whoever wins that division is going to have a giant leg up on the rest of these teams that are fighting in that mix.
Also, one of the tiebreakers down the list is your record within your division, your divisional record. And guess who's got the best divisional record amongst the Southeast Division teams?
Who?
That'd be the Buzz City Killers, baby.
The Buzz City Killers are 11-5.
Yep.
So, FYI. Real quick before we move on, but the Cavs are very hard to read right now. There are stretches in games where they look very good defensively. Overall, defensively for the last 20 games, they've been a middle of the pack to bottom 10 defensive team. There are stretches in games where they look good defensively, stretches in games where they look horrible defensively, stretches in games where they look awesome with James Harden out there, stretches of games where Dennis Schroeder has really had more subpar games than good games so far for them.
He had a point yesterday.
And Jared Allen remains out sort of indefinitely with what Kenny Atkinson calls severe knee tendonitis.
Ooh, that doesn't sound great.
So they ruled him out of this entire road trip before it even started. Maybe we'll get an update on Monday or Tuesday. But anyway, before we go, MacMahon, I just want to check in because you were just in Houston. The Rockets have had an interesting week. They had 2 wretched fourth quarter performances against the Lakers, accentuating. I totally botched that word.
Bontemps is the one with the good words.
Pointing out their fourth quarter issues because they just got totally outplayed. There is all kinds of stuff. They fall all the way down to the 5th seed, almost on 6th or whatever. Then they bounce back with 2 good wins over the weekend. Durant passes Jordan in scoring. They get was it a game winner on Saturday night? They won close.
Game-winning tip-in by Min Thompson.
That's right, a putback. And then they're celebrating in the locker room, celebrating with KD, dumping water on him, and now they're all happy. Ordinary time in the NBA is what I would call that. But just check in since you just spent a bunch of time there.
So a couple things. There was definitely a lot of discussion about KD's moodiness, right? The bad body language, there was a lot of vibe checking going on.
Well, and he had the quote about, maybe I shouldn't even have the ball. I mean, that wasn't just his moodiness.
Right. And look, the 2 losses to the Lakers, they'd gotten recently before that blown out in Denver, blown out in San Antonio, like things weren't going real well for the Rockets. They've been in an awful offense for a while. And KD, after they blew out the Hawks, came in and, I don't know if you guys know this, but KD's online a little bit. So he comes into the press conference and he basically says, hey, how are the vibes tonight? How was body language? And, kind of is mocking it, but he's very, kind of got his back up about it, which is fine. But there's a reason that people are looking at that stuff, but he's basically saying, hey, the vibes are good right now. So the vibes are good, or at least they've taken a significant tick upwards during these last couple games, which was needed. But the biggest development in the last couple games is Ime Udoka put Reed Shepherd into the starting lineup, and Tari Eason, who he was really shooting it well early in the season. He cannot buy a bucket. He's got his mom tweeting lethal shooter asking for help. I'm not even joking about that.
No, I know. His mom is active on the Twitters.
Yes, very much so. But Ime Udoka, before the Atlanta game, plugged Reed Shepherd into the starting lineup. And it's interesting. You understand why. Again, they've really been struggling offensively. He is a great shooter. He's a boost of offense. The lineup data with that group was not impressive before the Atlanta game, but it's definitely been impressive in these two games. And Ime has said, that the Rockets are going to give this. He didn't commit to the rest of the regular season, but he said, we're going to give it a good run here, basically, to see if this is what we want to do moving forward. And, it's obviously this game came down to against the Heat, the 83 gamers. This came down to Amin Thompson with a spectacular putback. By the way, 24 points and 18 rebounds for Amin Thompson. That was his 18th rebound of the game. But Reed Shepherd, 23 points on 8 of 12 shooting, 14 assists.
There you go.
Shouldn't this have happened sooner?
You could make that argument.
Well,
yes.
but the defense, he's going to get attacked on defense. So,
but look, here's the reality. Okay, the reality of the situation the Rockets are in is the Rockets are not good enough this year, right?
Probably.
They're just not. They're really good. They're not good enough.
They're not good
enough.
enough.
They're a really good team. They have a bright future, but they're not good enough. So, to me, the most important thing from this season is to figure out, between the combination of Reed Shepherd, Amin Thompson, and Alperen Şengün, how do those guys fit together? What is the maximum ceiling you think of that group? And how much growth can you see from those guys? And I'm glad we're at this point where Reed Shepherd is in the starting lineup. I think he should be in the starting lineup. And he should be in the starting lineup as far as this team goes to see what it looks like at the highest levels with him out there in critical situations with these guys that the Rockets are building around going forward. I understand if you didn't do it from the first day of the season, but I think it probably should have happened sooner than Saturday or Friday, I guess, the Atlanta game. And I'm glad it's happened because I think this group should get a run to see just what the ceiling of this team is and to see how bad the defensive issues are. Can they be fixed, or can you find ways to work around it? And how will they look with Reed at the controls with the shooting he provides and the passing he can deliver? I'm glad we're seeing it. I think it probably should have happened soon.
Well, and Wendy, what were you focused on for the Rockets leading into the trade deadline and then when they stood pat?
I thought they could have given themselves a guy to initiate their offense late in games with experience, and they either couldn't find that player, and they may not have found a deal they liked, but I felt their lack of veteran point guard play would hurt them. I felt that way since November, to be clear, but
there's a couple of factors in the Rockets' decision not to address the point guard position. Number one, Fred VanVleet is very much in their plans next season. By the way, when we talk about vibe check, the fact that they lost their leader in the preseason trip to the Bahamas, the guy who was supposed to kind of balance out KD's moodiness, and then lost Steven Adams, who's like this larger-than-life personality. That's part of the vibe struggle.
Can I ask one question quick, man? We haven't heard an update anytime recently on Fred? Is there any chance
you haven't? You should listen to Howdy Partners, the hit YouTube show that we do.
Okay, how about that for a tease for you, buddy?
Every Thursday. Yeah,
is there an update on Fred and his potential to play?
Yeah, I've learned from Wendy to leave wiggle room, but I was basically told, dude, it's not happening. Like, if it was going to be realistic, he'd have to be back in the mix now, because they're not going to, even if he's cleared for the first round,
it would be insane.
It would have been insane. It would have been insane to do it, but Fred is. So, I've known Fred a long time.
I know. He's kind of crazy. So I know.
Yeah, listen, I don't think anybody's going to tell Fred there's no way. But I'll just say hope is not flickering for Fred VanVleet to come back this year. Okay, but he's very much in the plans next year. So that's part of
that's a good way to get around aggregation. Hope is not flickering. I like that. I'm gonna write that down.
That is part of the reason. But the other major part of the logic here for them not addressing the point guard position before the trade deadline or at the trade deadline is because what position does Reed Sheppard play?
Point guard.
So you want them to bring in a stopgap point guard who would be taking minutes away from Reed Sheppard. They're like, no, the Rockets decided as a front office, we would rather live with the growing pains of Reed Sheppard and to a certain extent, Amin Thompson as well.
Okay, well, they are living with
bring in a stopgap.
Then they are living with them.
And so, yes, Reed Sheppard's got a huge opportunity in front of him, and Ime is committed to giving it a large enough sample size to decide whether that's the way they're going to roll going into the playoffs. But again, they didn't want to bring in, a Tyus Jones type of guy, or Cody White's not even really a point guard, but you know what I'm saying? They didn't want to bring in what they felt would be like a veteran stopgap type of guy that would take minutes away from Reed Sheppard, who management in Houston still firmly believes this kid has star potential.
I think Reed Sheppard's going to be awfully good too, and that's why I was fully on board with them doing that too. Like, I'd rather just see how it goes with Reed Sheppard this year and see where it lands, and then figure out what you're going to do going forward from there. Like, I think that's the prudent strategy. I just also would have coupled it with having him starting for the last month. But look, we're getting down to the part of the season when the games are really going to matter, and for it to be happening now is good. And I'm excited to see what that looks like over the next month or 2 months or however long the Rockets season goes. Like, it'll be very fun to watch.
Listen, if they can emerge from this whole thing with the 4 seed, which is where they're at right now, I know there's a lot of basketball still to be played, and they could get home court in the first round, that would be a significant accomplishment.
Right now, they're projected at the same record as Denver, right there. And the Lakers are almost 3 games clear. Incredibly, this streak has got them in really strong position to be third.
That loss that Memphis to Denver had, even though, like I said, it was a tough turnaround, that could end up.
Could cost them.
Anytime you lose to a team that's upset that they won, it's tough.
It's tough giving back games to tankers this season down the stretch.
You got that right.
It's not one you want to do.
All right. Well, that'll do for now. I look forward to our next podcast when we also lead with the Lakers. All right. Thank you.
Listen, hey, if they win the rest of the season, we're going to keep leading with the Lakers probably.
It's one thing when they're farting around 500 and people want to say, are the Lakers contenders? It's another thing when they won 12 or 13. They've merited some spotlight is what I would say.
No, listen, I thoroughly enjoyed. I had as much fun watching that Lakers Heat game down the stretch as I've had watching any regular season game this year. It was a joy to watch.
Just a quick little footnote. That same night, Wemby hits a pull-up mid-ranger.
I know.
Game winner to seal the Spurs' first playoff appearance since 2019.
Right, and then calls for the drum. That was awesome. Look, I agree the NCAA tournament is great stuff, but on the first night of the NCAA tournament, Luka scored 60 and Wemby hit a buzzer beater basically to send him to the first playoffs in 7 years.
They're pros for a reason, Brian.
Yeah.
They're pros for a reason.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much to Devon, Mark, and Jackson for putting this together. Thank you to MacMahon and Bontemps. Thank you for reading, listening, and watching the Hoop Collective. We'll talk to you later this week.
Adios, amigos.